This is TWiT.
What we're talking about here, because we want to cover all these streaming events, is, we were thrown a little bit because Google said we're going to go do it streaming and then said, no, we're not going to do it at all. But Microsoft's still planning on what? What is the plan for? Well, Ignite's coming up and then Build. What are the plans?
Yeah. So the one we were all wondering about was Ignite, which is supposed to be September in New Orleans. Paul and I were both like, they're never doing this, right? But
no way. They could cure this thing tomorrow, and this would never happen.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So as of last night, they put an official note on the site for Ignite saying it will not be an in-person event, and it will be digital only. So Ignite's going to happen still. That's the big IT Pro show. Normally, hold
on. I'm sorry. Ignite is not going to happen. Ignite is a in-person conference that people go to. This is not the same thing.
It's not the same, obviously.
I mean, it's not. They're going to do something in lieu of, No, I know there'll be announcements and sessions, and
they will. Yeah. They'll do all that kind of stuff, and they're going to figure out a way to try to make it compelling. I mean, we're going to find out first with Build, right? When Build's going to be a virtual event this year, and we're going to see what they think they can do to try to make people kind of interact.
I will say that this will probably change in the future, but as far as Build's concerned, it is probable that they can construct a session list of recorded sessions that will rival somewhat what the in-person thing would have been, right?
Yeah.
I haven't heard any about this in a while, but I know weeks ago people from Microsoft had been recording things for Build, for Build, I guess, with air quotes. So we'll see. And of course, September is far enough away that Microsoft could construct something, that is a little more involved, than a simple video or whatever. But we'll see. I don't know. I think there's a model that Microsoft and others are already following where they have these virtual events. I don't know if you follow the Xamarin One Day event they did last week. Where 7 hours of content. For some reason, it was live. I don't feel like it had to be live, but they did it live. And it's like people from their home giving sessions instead of people, coming to a place. And it was kind of interesting,
Yeah, yeah. But the bigger part of the story to me is I heard as of this week, Microsoft's actually made a corporate decision that they're not going to have any in-person events through the end of June 2021.
Wow.
Like none. I mean, there'll be, if things recover, they may go and attend a third-party event and have somebody there. But as far as other big events, and so that, if this is true, which I believe it is, that means no MVP Summit next year. Again, in person.
No Build again.
No Build in person. Right. And all these other things that kind of are around that. So, we said Ignite's canceled, but Ignite the Tour is also canceled as an in-person thing. So that's after Ignite happens, when they send people to all countries all over the world to give them technical content. That's not going to happen in person either. And then that means Ready, which is Microsoft's internal sales conference and tech conference. That's not going to happen in person. So that's what's usually co-located with Inspire. We knew Inspire was already canceled. And there's also multiple Readies throughout the year. So this is huge. This is like them canceling tons of events from what I hear again. And I'll tell you, when I asked them about this last night, I said, hey, I heard you started telling people inside the company that this is the plan. They said to me, we'll confirm that everything in calendar 2020 is not going to be an in-person event. And I said, well, what about the first half of 2021? And they said, I'm going to give you their exact wording because I think it's kind of interesting. They said, we will continue to evaluate the event landscape, but that is what we have to share at this time, which is they aren't going to tell us yet that the first half is canceled.
That makes sense for them, though, right? You don't want to trigger problems with the stock and for shareholders, et cetera. And I think it's also, as mealy-mouthed as that is, I mean, there's also this notion of, what if there is a recovery or a cure or whatever it is, and maybe they could reevaluate things for the first half of next year. I mean,
but I think I think they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
I think the reason I think they have to is they have to be out there getting event spaces and paying for them, right? And so I believe they have made this decision, and this is what they're telling their teams inside. And the reason I think they should say it publicly, an MVP brought this up on Twitter today, and I think he's right. He said, okay, they canceled the in-person MVP summit this year. So some of us got vouchers from our airlines for 1 year's use. So we need to know if they're not going to do it next year, because then we need to figure something out, because otherwise we're going to lose our vouchers. And I think that's a very legitimate reason to tell people this, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. We like going to a lot of these events. I mean, I love Build. I love Ignite. I like them because you see like we always say, we see our friends. We get to connect with people from Microsoft and do one-on-one meetings with them, have meetups. So it's tough.
Well, we were joking. I think it was before we started recording. I mean, for the three of us, our days have not changed too much. I mean, especially, you work from home and whatever. I mean, so, okay. But, the other half of that is, whatever anyone thinks about us working from home, whether they think it's great or terrible, the reality is we look forward to these events because we don't get into an office every day. That's a good point. Those events are, they're like little family reunions, they are. Or big family reunions, really. I mean, they're fun. And when you don't get out a lot, like I don't, I mean, that's what leads to that, first night drinking disaster, because you're so excited to be around everyone. You don't realize it's 3:00 in the morning and you got to work at 7. So yeah, we're going to miss that. It's,
I know.
It's too bad. And other people will too. Other people from all over the world that might travel, in this case, to, New Orleans this September, or Seattle for Build in May or next May, whatever. And they're not, and that's a big deal for those people too, for the same reason.
The part I'm the most interested in all this is, what is Microsoft going to do to try to make these events compelling and to foster a sense of community? Because right now you could say, okay, they're going to use Teams. They're going to record some things using Channel 9 probably. But like, how do you try to get people more engaged? Because when you're sitting at home, we pay an inordinate amount of attention to things that are being broadcast because that's our job. But if you're just, a normal IT person and you've got your kids at home and your spouse at home and you've got ahead of you like 10 hours of content back to back and you're sitting in your home office, how do you make that something engaging, right?
I'll say that just by virtue of the fact that people are sitting at home and are having this kind of non-ending sameness day to day, anything virtual that is different from the day to day would be of interest. So we'll talk about this in a moment, but Microsoft just had a virtual event for the press, which they declined to broadcast to the rest of the world. And there might be reasons for that. Maybe they were worried about bandwidth and whatever. They never really said. To my knowledge, they've never made that video available after the event in any form, which they should. I think that if you're worried about people being enthusiastic about what you're doing, or wanting to pay attention to what it is you have to announce, one of the ways you do that is to break the tedium and provide them with something they can look at that's different. So I think in this, I kind of said, like I said up front, like Ignite is not happening. They're doing this other thing, or, Build is not happening, but they're doing this other thing. Those other things are still important, because nothing is way worse than a virtual event. And, like Leo said with Google I/O, I mean, Google I/O is a milestone for Google every year for a number of reasons. They release Android usage numbers. They talk about the next version of Android in great detail. They talk about a lot of the other products. I mean, they should still be doing that stuff in some form. And I know there's sessions and whatever, and there are all these reasons for it. But I was a company like Google that exists online, that is literally an online only company, not to have an online event when their in-person events canceled.
I know.
Makes no sense.
It's weird. I know.
I mean, everybody understands that an online event is not the same. But nothing is not the same either. And that's really a problem.
Nothing is a lot worse.
Yeah, nothing is worse.
It is.
I would think. And I think companies will get good at doing this too, right?
Yeah.
I think it's, look, we talked about how useful it is for us, and this would be true of people who are developers going to build or IT guys going to Ignite, to kind of interact with people from Microsoft who are maybe responsible for the products that they use or parts of the teams that, you know, they just want to meet and discuss things with. There's a whole nother level of interest in, well, those guys are going to be on a video, but they're in their houses, you know, and they can, and there's kind of a neat, intimate, unprofessional, you know, kind of thing to it that's, I think is still fun and would be a nice distraction, frankly, at a time when we need some distractions.
Yeah.